Well, when we got back from Vegas,
You eloped to Vegas and got married in
yeah,
Vegas. Okay.
and we had to go tell our parents. I hated this. I did not want to have any part of this. But I had to, you know, there's sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, you know.
Okay.
And we walked in the back door, and they were having dinner. And Lorna said, this is Ben. We just got married. And Wayne was sitting there eating dinner, and he got up, and I thought, you know, he's going to come after me, you know. And he reached in his pocket. He pulled out a $100 bill and said, "It's going to take a lot of those, buddy." And he gave me this $100 bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And so we went from there. But, you know, he was not happy with me and didn't like me. Didn't really like to talk to me. And so time went on. And Lorna and I went to Utah. And that wasn't very favorable. She said hey, she couldn't handle it. And so I said, okay, let's go back to LA. I'll make some money and we'll go to Oregon. As I've been to Oregon, you know, and it's a beautiful place, man. And so we did that. We come back and it wasn't that easy to save up any money to get out of town. And I've been working in the steel mill, and a horrible job, you know. And we got paid. We paid the rent, and we bought groceries. We had a $100 bill left. And my brother Dan, 2 days before that, had showed up on our doorstep. He'd been in Utah. And my other brother, Rod, is still in the military. And he's going to go back to Fort Lewis, Washington. And so he said, the old man's going to take me up there. And I said, oh, okay.
Meaning Robert?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so we talked for a little while, and he said, well, I'll see you later. And he's getting ready to walk out the door, and I said, oh, wait a minute. You guys are going through Medford, Oregon, right? And he says, right. And I said, what's the chance of getting a ride with you guys? You know? And he says, chip in $20 for gas and you're on the road, you know. So we did, you know. Now we have $80.
What year was this?
That was 59.
59, okay.
Yeah. And so we came and we got here early in the morning. We stopped, we had breakfast. And Rod says, I'll see you later, you know. And these guys are, both of them, cruise a stick, you know. And so they took off. And Lorna and I, we took off. We've got a suitcase and a paper bag with our pots and pans, huh? And so we start walking up Main Street. We're walking westerly, you know. We have no idea where we're going. Absolutely no idea. Now, this is one of those times when you feel the presence of, you know. And I did. I felt the presence. Yogananda. And I'm just going, wow, that's weird, you know. And so we get to Oakdale Street, And we turned and we started walking down the street. And there's a big house, Oakdale on Pennsylvania. Kind of made a jog right there, and this big house sat right there on the corner, and it kind of stood out. And I told Lorna, I says, you know, I'd love to live in a house like that someday. You know, I'd love it. And we just kept walking, and we got close, and here's this little sign in the window. It says, apartment for rent. Went up and knocked on the door. And this little old lady come to the door, and I said, do you have an apartment for rent? And she says, I do. And I said, well, how much is it? And she said, $40. And so we come in, and Lorna's not feeling good at all. I mean, she is sick. And so we get settled, get our bag in, and get our pots and pans in. We go down to the market. There was a Safeway market down on Oakdale. And, we went in and we bought a small ham, some beans, I think a jar of peanut butter and a loaf of bread, and took off back. And we get back, and now, you know, my money's really getting short. But we've got food for a few days, you know. And she kept getting sicker and sicker. And so I went and I talked to the landlady. I said, you know, do you know a good doctor or anything that I can, you know, get Lorna to? And she says, well, my doctor's a fine doctor. You know, and I said, oh, okay. And this is when they still made house calls. You know, they had the little bag, and then they come up, and he come in and knocked on the door, and brought him in, and he checked Lorna out, and he said, well, she has pneumonia. And he goes, I have some pills here in my bag, a couple of them, you know, antibiotics. And he gives them to her, and he says, you're going to have to go get a prescription. And I told him, I said, you know, I have about $15. You know, I'm looking for work, and I'm broke. And he says, well, I'll call the drugstore and tell them the situation, and you go down to the drugstore. And so I think the prescription probably cost $12 or $13, and I got it. Come back. Now we're really busted, you know, but we got to get that girl feeling better. And I took off looking for work. And I went everywhere in this valley, man. Every place, man. All the sawmills, everything that you could think of, I'd give it a try. And I'm going, wow, this is, you know, I'm desperate now. And we got here on the 26th day of October. Yeah, I remember it well. And so I just kept looking for work. And I went by Medford Corporation. It's a big sawmill, and I went in, and the boss told me, he said, nah, I don't need anybody. And I said, oh, man, you know, so the next morning I showed up, 8 o'clock, I'm there, man, they're just starting to fire up, and he says, I don't need anybody. And I went, wow. So they have a catwalk there. And I thought, well, I'll just walk up on this catwalk and take a look at how things are running and what it's actually like, because I wasn't familiar with it at all. And so I went up, and I'm standing on that catwalk, and I'm watching everything run and how they're doing it and doing this and doing that. And I stayed up there for about 2 hours, and I'm watching everything, you know, and I'm soaking it up. And pretty soon, here come that boss up on that catwalk. And I think, oh, man, I better get out of here. And he come over to me, and he says, you really want a job, huh? And I says, I have to have a job. There isn't a matter of wanting one, man. I have to have one. And he said, I'll tell you what, and this is Friday. And he says, you be here Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and I'll put you to work. And I showed up at Monday morning, and he took me down underneath the mill and said, okay, you just start cleaning this mess up, you know, and he says it's continuous, it's here every day, every morning, you're going to have the same thing to do. It's a mess. And it was, you know. And so I started cleaning it up. At the end of the conveyors, it'd be piles of stuff, and I'd get it taken care of and go clean these slides out and do all of this. And well, I worked hard, man, you know. I kept up with everything, and I've got it spotless, and I'm keeping it that way. And when I come in the mornings, it's still not too bad yet, you know. And so I just keep it all. And so one day he come down and he said, "How would you like to go upstairs and relieve a couple of these guys on some of these jobs?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I can do that." And so we come up, and I started relieving some of these men on the different jobs, and it wasn't long till I knew everything. I knew everything. And I sawed, I set ratchet, you know, on the carriage, you know, with the logs. And you're working with sign language, you know, because the sawyer is telling you what to set the dogs at, and then the edgers. I run all the edgers, you know, you go over there and run them, and I got good at it. And that's the way it went. And then finally, they built a plywood mill, a great big plywood mill. I mean, this is a huge mill. I mean, there must be 40 acres under the main roof, you know. Not a window in it. You walk in there and you don't know what's going on in the rest of the world the rest of the day. And so I went in and I said, well, I think I'm going to go over in the plywood mill. You know, so I put in for a transfer to the plywood mill, and I got it, and I went over there, and I started pulling green chain. And what that is the veneer. You know, it's coming over a fast chain. You know, there's guys on both sides of these belts, and you separate this plywood, be 27 inches or strip or 48 inches or what, you know, and you put it in this stack, in that stack, you're separating it and pulling it off of this chain. So I got pretty good at it, and I knew a little bit about grade because I'd been working in the sawmill. I know what grade is. And so I kept watching the veneer and seeing the grade and how it was being cut. And pretty soon the guy that was clipping, he had a huge clipper. And this veneer is coming fast, man. It's coming 100 feet a minute, you know, just it's flying, man. And you have to be able to see the knife and see the veneer, read the grade, and cut it into that.
Wow.
So the other fellow that was running the clipper said, hey, we got to be pretty good friends. He says, look, why don't you come up and clip for an hour, and I'll pull green chain. He says, I need the exercise.